Welcome to Off the Blocks, the podcast version of Concordium's AMAs. Your unique opportunity to take a peek behind the scenes, ask questions, and hear all about our vision, unplugged and firsthand.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Off the Blocks episode. This is Concordium's monthly AMA session with the community, and we have a very special guest today. Just going to wait for Lars to accept my co-host request. Lars, if you could see in your notifications where I've added you as a co-host, if you just accept that, we can have you up on stage and have you ready to speak. So once we have Lars accept the co-host request and the speaking request, we'll have him up on stage. So please bear with us with a couple more minutes whilst we get Lars on stage. Thank you very much. Great. There he is. He's now accepted. We are very excited to have Lars here again. My name is Ernest, and I will be your host and moderator for this session. And just a few housekeeping rules before we get going. We will begin with a short introduction from Lars. For those who may be joining us for the first time, of course, we had a AMA with Lars in February, in the middle of February, and this is Lars' second time here. But just for those who may be joining us for the first time, Lars will give a very quick introduction. Then we will go through some questions both posed by the community using our hashtag Concordium AMA. And we'll also be bringing back some questions from the prior AMA, which were not covered because that was something really important to the community. And if we have time, we will have an open mic session as well, where you, the audience, can ask Lars some questions directly in a respectable Q&A. Lars, it's great to have you. Before we start, and before we get into things, we would like to say a few words about the situation in Ukraine. We have employees, partners, and loved ones in the region. And on behalf of Concordium, let's hope that we have a quick resolution to this situation and a return to peace. So our hearts go out to the people suffering at this time. We would now like to introduce Lars Seier Christensen, the founder of Concordium. He'll be taking the questions from the community. And if you still want to add some questions, use the hashtag CommunityAMA, and we will scan through and try and add them into this session as well. So welcome, Lars. It's great to have you. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Well, a little bit about myself. I had another life in a fintech before anybody had really coined that phrase, but I co-founded a company called Seier Bank back in 1992, where we were very early adopters of the internet and launched one of the first internet-based trading platforms back when there was maybe less than 25, 50 million users globally on the internet. So we were very early adopters there, built that for a number of years, provided a lot of infrastructure for other financial institutions. So my interest in applicable technology and infrastructure derives mostly from that experience. I stepped down from Seier Bank towards the end of 2015 to concentrate on other investments, and I finally sold out my last shares in Seier Bank in September 2018. So today I have no direct relationship to Seier Bank any longer. In parallel with that, I was a fairly early I found an early interest, I would say, in the blockchain and crypto space, probably since about 2012. So spotted that at a relatively early stage also, and was quite the ambassador for Bitcoin and Ethereum early on, but became somewhat skeptical over the years about some of the things that didn't work so well in the first generations, and that led me to found the Concordium project together with a bunch of other people that shared our vision of of a compliant blockchain, ID-based blockchain that makes it a lot easier for mainstream adoption than some of the problems of earlier generations.
Right, and you said that you were the first banker taking crypto seriously. What got you into blockchain?
Well, I don't know if I was the first banker, but I remember coming to conferences in the early days where I certainly was the only banker, being quite sought after for that very reason, that they had probably never seen somebody that came from a bank in that early environment. But I was certainly an early adopter, and I guess Saxo Bank was always quite focused on trading foreign exchange, and I saw some of the same characteristics in Bitcoin, I guess, and thought that might be an interesting product for our clients one day. So I was fairly early in that, but was mostly from an investment and interest point of view in the early years, and then actually building something with Concordium since the last 4 years or so. But I've been sort of somewhat engaged in the space for 10 years, which I guess is a few lifetimes in blockchain terms.
And why was it important for you to create your own blockchain? Why not just join one of the others in the market?
Well, to be honest, I did invest in various other blockchains in the early days, and even to this day, I have some of my investments in various projects in blockchain. But I do think, as I just touched on briefly, that there's some problems with the early generations that, in my view, and even current generations, that in my view will make broad mainstream adoption very difficult, particularly the anonymity aspect. No serious corporate, no serious business can really live with part of the network of their clients being anonymous. I think that's a major issue, and you can also see that when bigger companies use blockchain, it's normally closed, permission-based systems, but then they lose sort of the opportunity of the broad market. It's almost like an intranet within the internet, right? So, of course, there are other issues: scalability, gas fees, the ESG concerns, the electricity consumption, which I guess at the design time of Bitcoin in 2008 to 2009 was not such a big agenda item as it is today, but it certainly has become that, and I've added that to the list of things that we needed to fix in a new blockchain project, because you're absolutely right. At that time, there were probably 2,000 or 3,000 blockchains out there, so if you were going to do number 3001, it clearly had to have some differentiating factors, some USPs, and I sincerely believe that Concordium has a combination of functions that are very different to most blockchains, very heavily science-based, and therefore also has a better chance of broad mainstream adoption. But that's obviously what we're going to try to prove in coming years.
Thank you for the background, Lars. Now we're going to get into some questions from the community. Some of these questions are quite tough, so excuse me in advance. The first question keeps coming up, and it's something that we would want to take on first. How do you react to comments like the following from the community? Another fake recorded AMA. None of the questions were answered the last time. And, how do you feel after scamming all your early investors? These are some of the things that we wanted to put before you.
Yeah, you can ask me questions. I can take it. I obviously disagree with those statements. First of all, this is obviously not a recorded AMA. It's 14:08 in case anybody wants to check the time. So that's just a ridiculous comment, right? And incorrect. So that should be very clear. Secondly, I think people might confuse answering questions with short answers and detailed answers. Being short on words is not one of my features, and I like to answer questions in a detailed way. But I certainly do think I answer the questions, and I will also do that here today. And finally, when people use the derogatory terms like that, I think I don't like it. I won't say I can smile at it, because if you look at my record, it's very, very clear that that's not the way that I have done business, and that's not the way we do business at this point in time. We, like any other project in this space, have taken in investors at various points, very, very much on their own desires. Then we go up sometimes, then we go down sometimes. I think it's happened to nearly any major project out there in even in more pronounced terms than us. So go check your facts, and if you believe in this project, buy some tokens. If you don't believe in it, don't. But stay factual and wait and see what we're going to build in coming years.
The next question has to do with tokenomics. Some of the community believes or say that the tokenomics were changed just before the listing. Is that true?
No, again, that's just incorrect, and I think I answered that in the last AMA as well. The only thing that changed was that there was a delay in the first listing, which was out of our control, and that meant that another chunk of tokens were released according to the schedule that had been well known to people and hasn't changed. So, again, it's just incorrect. So what can I say? Tokenomics are what they are. I don't think they're particularly more aggressive than in most other projects. In fact, we probably have less free-floating tokens than most projects. So again, people need to check their facts. I think we make them very widely available, and people can read everything they want on our various channels and websites.
Okay, I just want to challenge a little bit further on the tokenomics. There have been comments from the community that the tokenomics are bad or not sound. Specifically, Concordium has been blamed for releasing a great deal of supply very quickly before there was demand. In their view, this is the cause for the drop in price. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I don't agree in that. First of all, we haven't released, compared to most other projects, a huge amount of supply. That is simply not correct. In fact, less than most other projects. So that's not correct. It's also not behind the price action, as far as I can see. We're in a couple of exchanges where trading is very thin. You'll probably notice in the last 24 hours it's gone up by 20% or something like that. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to move this token up or down in the short term, and it's not really very interesting what it is in the short term. The question here is, do you believe in the project, or do you not believe in the project? If you believe in the project, I think you will be happy. If you don't believe in it, don't get involved.
Okay. I would now like to tackle some of the questions around the seed sale. Is it true that there was a seed sale with a token price of 0.00099 euro? And if true, why was this not mentioned in the investor deck? The question says, I know some people felt that hiding these numbers, especially since the multipliers are large, brought about a bad sentiment in the community.
Well, again, it's incorrect. It's apparent from our various documentation that there's a seed sale. It's quite clear in the cap table and always has been. So again, it's just inaccurate. People need to either do their homework or ask the questions, and we will guide them to where they can read it. So again, it's simply not correct. It is correct that there was a very early seed sale to get the project started when it was frankly only an idea in my mind. I had to gather a few people around the table and get them engaged. Normally you would have given them some tokens for free to engage, but actually these people had to pay for their tokens just as I did, and I subsequently have bought in the private placements as well. So I don't think that's abnormal. I can tell you when I just had an idea in my mind and I mentioned the valuation of, I can't remember what it was, $10 million or something, can't remember the exact prices. There was a lot of pushback on that price because people say, why should I pay that just because you have an idea, Lars? But in the end, we gathered around the table, we got the project started, and if you have any kind of experience with startups, that's the way it works. You get in early, you take a much bigger risk than if you go into an established mature project, and that is reflected in the price. Now, if people think that they want the low price, I guess you can say you can have it on the exchanges now. So here is a chance to get in at a fairly low price for I would say a quality project if you want to do it. But I don't see anything unusual about that, and it certainly hasn't been hidden in any way. Why should we do that?
Okay, let's talk liquidity and supply now. As you know, the market is seeing an excess supply. Who, in your opinion, is dumping the CCD and causing the price to crash?
I don't think we're seeing an excess supply. I think we're seeing too little demand, and there's a number of reasons for that we're not on very many exchanges at the moment. This will change, as we have signaled many times. That the norm for that is that the exchange announces it a few days before, like it was with a couple of exchanges we have released, and that is what will happen here. But we do have signed contracts and processes ongoing with several exchanges, so that will happen and be announced in due course, and that will widen the demand. Today, not a lot of people. I actually often speak to people that ask me, how can I buy this? And I direct them to these exchanges, etc. But there's just there's too thin the market for real price discovery, in my view, and this will change as we go on more exchanges. But I speak on a daily basis with people asking me, I'd really like to get involved at this level. How do I do it? And then I try to direct them, but it's not that easy for some people. But there's certainly interest out there, and I'm sure that will become more visible as we go on to more exchanges.
I understand. But just as a follow-up to that, the question asks that we know, the community knows that you personally hold 15% of all CCD. Again, have you, Lars, sold any tokens now that are liquid? And again, what about the foundation as well?
No, I absolutely haven't sold any tokens, and I have absolutely no intentions of doing that for a very long time. I am totally committed to this project. I think my token stake will be very valuable at some point in time, and I have absolutely no intentions of selling, and have not sold any token. So that's a simple question to that, and in that sense, people should probably feel comfortable with that both that supply is de facto off the market. So is Foundation's general stash, you can say, because we are very well funded. We have money to run this project's runway for a long time. We give out some grants to facilitate people and incentivizing people to get involved. We have done some airdrops, but we're not selling for raising funds, because we have funds to run for quite a considerable period of time, which again I think is a very good thing that people should take comfort in, that the project is well funded. There's a lot of plans for further development of the functionality and the ecosystem around it, and so in effect, apart from not that many tokens actually having been released, of course there will be more releases over the coming 40 months in various ways, depending on which actors it is. But a quite substantial part of that is off the market in reality. So will not be sold for a very long time.
Right. No, I understand. Just as a follow-up, and again, to continue to really challenge your points there, this market has heard before from founders that they will do A, but then they go and do B. So what guarantees are you willing to make to the community and this audience that you will not indeed sell your CCD? What about other seed or major investors as well?
Well, I can only speak to my record. When I say A, I don't do B, and I haven't got a history of that, and I will not do B when I say A. That's up to people to believe or not, but they have not seen or heard that from this founder or any other founder in the project, right? So I can speak on my own behalf. I can speak on Concordium's behalf. I know other partners and important people are generally there for the long term, but the tokenomics are as they are. I can speak for myself. I can speak for the foundation. If other people want to make statements, they can do that. But that in itself is already a lot off the market. And as you can see, we have engaged staking companies, so people are staking their funds to earn rewards, which means that they will not be selling during that period. But I really think to the community here, stop worrying so much about that side and start thinking about demand. Start help spread the word about Concordiums, particularly on getting more use cases. We get a lot of use cases coming in, but we want many more. So help spread the word and be positive about a great project instead of fretting over what sounds like often misunderstanding understandings around the tokenomics, and I don't know really what more we can do to explain that. I've done it on a number of times. It's easily available in our various channels to see what the reality is. The thing here is that to get Concordium to where we want to be, we need more and more people to take an interest in it, building on it. We see, as I said, a lot of use cases coming in, including some very exciting ones. We announced a great partnership with a very important global integrator, NTT Data, that will introduce their clients when they go and do projects for various clients. We'll introduce them to Concordium as a preferred blockchain. So we have a lot of stuff coming in, but if the community wants success and a good outcome here, well, spend your time supporting it and tell people about the greatness of the project. And incidentally, I would say that is largely what I see in the various Telegram groups, etc. That there's a lot of people actually understanding the project, speaking well of the project, and appreciating the various features that are very different from most things out there, and in my view, better than most of the other things out there. So help spread that word and be positive, and everything will be fine.
Okay, just a last question about the seed buyers. So it's not probable the early strategic and seed buyers at 0.049 to 0.0069 will sell their tokens in 5 months or anything like that, when their tokens will be unlocked.
Well, I certainly won't. The foundation won't. I would imagine most of the other people wouldn't either, but that's for them to decide. I mean, they have the tokenomics that they have, and I'm not going to sit here and make demands on people. But it's my impression that many of these people are in there for the long haul, and that their tokens will not come to the market in any near future. But I can certainly speak for myself and the foundation, and there would be no sales in either 5, 7, 9, 12 months and further out into the future. So that's nothing to worry about. I can't guarantee I won't buy some, but I'm certainly not going to sell some.
Great. Thank you very much for those answers. Now let's talk a bit about Amdax. What exactly is the relationship with Amdax, and how is it connected to the founders, seed, and team?
Amdax is a group of Dutch investors. There's no particular connection other than they have believed in the project along the way, bought in various rounds, and continue to be very supportive of it. So they're one among the approximately 700 investors that we took on in the private round. So there's no particular relationship to them other than the one we have with any other investor, that we keep each other informed. They can ask questions just like everybody can here. But apart from that, there's no special relationship that is different to anybody else that supports the project.
Okay. When can we expect the next exchanges?
As I said, this communication, and maybe that's difficult for people to understand, but the exchanges want to communicate that themselves a few days before they list, and they don't take kindly to you jumping the gun. But as I said, there's multiple additional exchanges coming on during, I would say, the months of March and April. But I can't give the exact dates of the exact exchanges. But there, in my view, are a couple of them that the community will appreciate.
Okay. And how do you plan, or what plans are afoot to increase the demand for CCD?
Well, what we do every day of the week, we work with use cases that will be using the token. We seek to increase awareness about the project, generate interest in the project, and that's going very well. Thank you.
And how does that kind of relate to the growth of the ecosystem and the exposure for Concordium in the foreseeable future? What plans are afoot for growing the ecosystem at large?
Well, there are many plans for various marketing campaigns. As I said, exchange listings, that is probably the most important way to get more people interested and informed about Concordium. There are many participation in conferences. I'm speaking at multiple conferences just in the next couple of months, and so are many of my colleagues participating there, giving speeches to private business associations. I do probably 1 or 2 every week of that nature, speaking to C-level people that are interested in hearing more about it. As late as yesterday, I spoke to about 40 people particularly interested in traceability aspects, provenance, which is a great use case for blockchain. And this is just an ongoing effort. I work on this every day, pretty much the whole day, 24/7, I would say, because I don't really distinguish much between weekdays and weekends. But there's a lot of interest out there. There's easily enough to keep me and a whole bunch of people busy discussing interesting use cases, helping people with the additional information they may need to do this. And again, more marketing campaigns, more exchange listings will all do the job in the long run.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I just now want to home in on the identity layer. There are identity solutions being built for existing blockchains. What are the key differentiators of putting identity at the protocol layer as a first-class concern from a business and technical perspective?
It's very, very important to put it at the layer 1, and that I would say, apart from we're doing a lot of stuff that's technically more difficult, probably that are enhancements and innovations in cryptography and blockchain. It is absolutely key to have it at the layer 1, because it's absolutely true that you can build a layer 2 ID solution, but that will restrict you if you're stringently adhering to that. Well, you can only interact with the people that you have onboarded yourself. So again, you could liken that more to an intranet than the internet if you want to use that parallel, right? So I believe very, very strongly that the real key differentiation is identification at the entry point, at the layer 1 level. The layer 2 solution is just a recognition, actually, I think, of the design problem in many blockchains out there that they don't have it at layer 1. So it's just an added complication and something that greatly restricts who you actually can interact with and do business with, because if you're relying on a layer 2 ID system, well, you can only interact with the people that have gone through that specific additional layer on top of the foundational layer. And I think it's a fine solution. There's nothing wrong with layer 2 ID solutions, but they restrict you to a much smaller group of people you interact with compared to actually going to the entire layer 1 when you're marketing, distributing your projects.
So Concordium is a very new player compared to other layer 1 proof-of-stake networks that have been around at least 2 years. What strategy to catch up in all dimensions, but especially the feature delivery regarding the product roadmap?
Well, I don't fully agree with that. We've actually been building this platform for more than 3 years now. I got the original idea in late 2017, so that's like nearly 4.5 years ago today. And other blockchains out there have also built for quite a long time. What we perhaps have done differently, and again, I think that's a testament to us wanting to do the right thing, is that we have only gone out and distributed tokens after we listed our mainnet, right? Many other projects list sort of what you call a placeholder token in the form of an ERC20 token on Ethereum, whereby they can start hyping, getting interest into this token prior to having built anything. Now, in some cases, this works out and something comes out at the end. In some cases, it doesn't work out and nothing comes out at the end. For us, building what in essence is a compliant and better version of Ethereum-style foundational blockchains, it obviously doesn't match with our narrative then if we had gone out and did a sort of temporary placeholder token on Ethereum and then having lots of anonymous actors interfering with it there. So the reality here is more about when is the project visible to people rather than when did you build it. And I think that also has something to do with the price action, because if you look at certain other blockchains, they also had big run-ups in price, steep falls, a period where they languished, and then if they were great projects, they came back up strong. Now, that can happen before or after you go on the exchange, and there was a lot of demand for this token in the prior to prior to listing, people that really wanted to get involved at various private placements, and we accommodated that. And now we have seen a sell-off at the early stages after listing. But again, I really wouldn't put very much into that price discovery, because the market is so thin that I would actually rather have this conversation, let's say 3 months down the line, when we are on multiple exchanges, including a couple of bigger ones that we are on now, because then I think we will have a more true price discovery, and we can begin to have a meaningful discussion about how does the market really value this token, right? Because I know, as I said, of multiple people that would like to buy, but currently can't really do it because they're not on the exchanges that we are on, and they're trying to get on there. But I would think we can have a meaningful discussion about this in about 3 months when we have a broader distribution and a broader set of platforms, and there we can see what the real assessment from the market is of the value of this project. You also have to think that if you went in and bought just $1-2 million of the token at the current levels, the price would shoot up immediately, because the market is very thin, and that goes both ways, obviously. So for me, I don't put too much emphasis on the current price. I'm very interested in where it is 3-6 months down the line, because then people will know the project better. We will have a much broader distribution of the token, and we will be available in many more places and see many more use cases actually having launched instead of just building as they are now.
Thank you for the answer. How does Concordium AG and the foundation collaborate? Let's get into a little bit on the business model of Concordium AG.
Yeah, it's important to understand that you can say that the founder of the project is what we call Concordium Foundation, which is a Swiss non-profit foundation. So any token that's sold, the money goes back into the foundation. It can only be used for one purpose, and that is to build and promote the Concordium blockchain and the cryptography related to it. So any token that's sold goes there. When it's sold out from the foundation, and all of the private placements, etc., the money goes into the foundation, is being used solely for that purpose. You cannot, from a Swiss foundation, distribute money to the board or the founders or whatever. So any token bought there in the private rounds will be supportive of the project. Now, Concordium AG, a foundation, really just holds some assets, has a mandate to do certain things, and it's a well-known entity in Switzerland. Once you have defined it, you cannot touch what's inside of it. You cannot easily change the mandate. That would take you years in Swiss courts to change the mandate significantly. So that's what Concordium Foundation is. Now, in order to actually build it, we have to hire people, we have to pay them salaries, we have to pay rent, we have to have all sorts of ongoing expenditure like any business would have. And for that, we need a company structure, which is Concordium AG. But Concordium AG is 100% owned by Concordium Foundation. So should there, for example, be a profit in Concordium AG, that would also flow to the foundation. And again, the money could only be used for supporting Concordium and the cryptography behind it. So it is a closed system. So it's not that there's some shareholders in Concordium AG having an advantage out of that going well and not caring about the foundation, because Concordium AG is the foundation. It is owned 100% by the foundation. So it all goes towards the same cause, building the world's greatest blockchain, and that's what we're trying to do.
Could you elaborate more on what you think should have been done differently from Concordium's side to facilitate a successful launch?
Well, I think the most important thing here is the project. We need to build a truly great project, and we need to get adoption of that project. We need to have the features that enables us to get adoption, and sooner or later you have to make the token available for people. And as you will probably recall, there was a very big demand for a listing, and when is it coming? And so we accommodated that demand by listing. Now, you can't just, people are saying, why don't you list on this exchange? Why don't you list on that exchange? And that's not how it works. Most of the really big exchanges want to see you successfully listed at a couple of other exchanges, see some volume, see that there's a reason for them to list. So per definition, you don't go straight on Coinbase, typically, or Kraken, or one of these very large exchanges. They will accept you after a while if they think that they can see that there's an interesting volume play for them, because that's of course what those exchanges live from. So we listed, I think, on a good couple of exchanges. There's nothing wrong about Bitfinex, and we're happy to list there. But there are some bigger exchanges out there, without question, right? But that is the kind of order that you have to follow when you get on the market, and you will see a continuous stream of small and big listings in the future. I have, since we have now been on these two exchanges for less than a month, I've had several contacts from additional exchanges we didn't even have on our short list that say, oh, could we get involved? Could we also list Concordium? So this will be an ongoing process, and as we get on more exchanges, there'll be more demand, and the supply will be what the supply is. So that's pretty evident that if we have a certain supply and we have a growing demand over time, that should be healthy for the project, I suspect, right? So I don't know really what we could have done much differently, to be honest, because we are in the business here of building a great project and making people aware that it exists, and that's a process that's ongoing and will continue to be ongoing for years to come. And that will include, as I said, marketing campaigns. It'll include use cases. It'll include conferences. It'll include going out to many, many people proactively and saying, when you're building on blockchain, shouldn't you consider this one? And it will include many more listings as well. So that is how demand will be built over time. And I must say, when I go out to conferences and people come up and say, oh, I would like to learn more about this, we've already decided to build on so-and-so blockchain. If you have an hour with these people and you really go through them in detail, what is the difference between Concordium and the typical blockchain that they would have chosen? I shan't mention any specifics, but it's kind of the usual suspects often. They can understand what the difference is, and either they change their mind and build on Concordium, or they go home and think very hard about their technology choice, as they should, because I think people, if they're not very familiar with this industry, tend to say, oh, blockchain is blockchain. But blockchain is not blockchain. If you have serious issues and serious differences in quality of the tech work in many different blockchains, and there are big blockchains out there that I would never in my wildest dreams build a use case on, because I wouldn't feel sure that it was sustainable for the long term. And there are others that are okay and that you probably can also build on, but I would say that there's a reason that we have construed Concordium the way we have construed it. And that is because we think that's the way that a blockchain should be and has to be to achieve serious mainstream adoption. And that's kind of what we're looking for here. I'm not really looking so much at what's happening in blockchain space right now as I'm looking in what's happening 5 years from now, when all the people I speak to in various business associations, etc., have initiated their blockchain projects, have taken serious parts of their business processes onto the blockchain, and it is mainstream. That's where you want to be a major player. I don't think it's a winner takes all, but I don't think there's going to be that many foundational blockchains taking a significant chunk of that mainstream adoption. And we want to make sure that Concordium is one of them by building into it the right features.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you for that very detailed answer. I just want to take some time to go to the bigger picture now. I understand that the manifesto which you wrote has come to life in Concordium. What do you think makes Concordium different?
Well, it'll be a little bit repetitive, but at the end of the day, I think I know anonymity is a huge problem for most serious businesses, certainly in the financial sector, which is also looking to get involved in DeFi, but finding it quite hard with the circumstances surrounding surrounding DeFi, right? Particularly anonymity aspects that are complicated, if not impossible, for financial institutions to work with. I know that because I was the CEO of a financial institution dealing with retail clients for more than 20 years, and I know what regulators expect to see, and that's a lot. They expect to see that you know what's going on. They expect to see that you keep certain people that want to abuse a system, that you keep them identifiable in some way, shape, or form. They want to know that there's a protection against people get involved in stuff that they don't fully understand, so they get into lots of trouble. And that's going to come to blockchain. This is only a question of time, not a question of if. Is it going to be exactly like what we're used to from other walks of life? Not necessarily, but it would be close enough, because regulators and politicians tends to have some boxes that they like to fit things into. So to believe that for example, a regulation of crypto assets and tokenized assets and blockchains will be significantly different from what we know otherwise is a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. That doesn't mean that you couldn't have some systems that choose to operate without fulfilling those requirements, but and that will then potentially carry some consequences for people that use those systems. But real mainstream adoption is not going to happen on those systems. That's very simple. Just like you can set up an unregulated financial institution in some faraway country today, and then you can dupe some people into thinking that you are legit. But at the end of the day, you also are not very likely to have a long and happy and successful life in that way. So we might as well get used to the fact that the world around us has expectations of this space. That was a very unpopular comment 5 years ago when I started traveling around and telling people my views on this, but I think most people have come around to that now and are struggling to meet these requirements from a very difficult starting point, which is what results in layer 2 solutions, but doesn't really deal with the fundamental layer 1 problem, which is what we chose to address from day one, and have stuck, as you said, pretty much with the vision that we had from day one, because it's not a complicated vision. It's really just fix anonymity, fix scalability, fix the energy usage, actually get a better balance of privacy so you can be private around some things, but that's not the same as being anonymous. And these are key things for mainstream adoption, and it's not going to happen otherwise. And it isn't happening. When you look at the much talked about DeFi space, has billions and billions of dollars. Yes, it has some billions of dollars, but it probably doesn't have more billions of dollars than my small Saxo Bank has today, right? In one single relatively small institution. So think about how big the potential is out there if you really get people engaged in this space. But in order to do that, they need to see certain things, and we believe that those are the things we're building into Concordium, and hence we'll find it easier to get that adoption than many other platforms out there.
Great, thank you for that answer. So coming up to our last question now, where do you see Concordium going next? Where do you see blockchain going next?
I'm a big believer in blockchain potential. As I mentioned, we got involved in the internet early. We saw that opportunity and made the most of it. For the following 25 years, I haven't really seen anything other with that transformative potential than that the internet had than blockchain. Blockchain has a very large transformative potential for our economies. It can strengthen existing processes. It can register ownership in a much safer way. It can allow people to interact with full trust in each other because they can't do other than do what they agree in a smart contract, and they cannot claim to own things unless they can prove that they do in fact own them. So that can improve many existing processes. But what is also exciting is that once you have those particular parameters, which you don't have in the internet, you can't know with certainty who you're dealing with in the internet. You can't know with certainty whether an electronic file exists in one copy or in a million copies. There are many things that you can do on the internet, but there's also a lot of stuff that you can't do, and those things are now being provided by blockchain, and I think that is a huge opportunity and will also lead to completely new business models that we haven't thought of yet, because then we'd be busy building them. Just as in the mid to late 90s, we were building a trading platform, but nobody had even thought about Facebook or Google or some of the other things that turned out to be very, very successful. If we had thought of them, we probably have built them instead of Saxo Bank, right? So when new technology comes around, it creates new possibilities. It means that a lot of minds are being put to developing great apps and great functionalities on top of blockchain, and that's what's going to happen here. The other problem we have is that or the other opportunity we have, I'd rather say, is that people don't fully understand blockchain. They don't understand that it's actually a very, very simple thing. So when I'm out speaking to business people, I always spend time just explaining to them how simple blockchain really is, because it is very simple. The internet is probably much more complicated when it comes down to it. But because we haven't got all these bridges and all these smooth access points that we have built to the internet over the years, where people know they're using the internet, but they don't really have to know how it works, because there are all sorts of ways to get engaged there without having to build the hardcore integration technology. We need to build some of the same bridges to blockchain, so people don't have this misunderstood thing that this is very, very complicated, and it's probably too much hassle to go in and build on it, because I don't understand the technology. I don't have people in the organization that understands technology. This is exactly what people were saying about the internet in 1995. Oh, we don't understand it, and it's very hard to interact with. And it was very hard to interact with, because you actually needed to build all the basic building blocks yourself at the time. Then came browsers, then came apps, then came frontline shops, then came many, many, many things that were based on the internet, but gave normal businesses easy access to building what they wanted to build on top of it. And that is a very important objective for this industry, I think, is to make it easier to interact with the blockchain. Use the blockchain without really feeling you have to have deep insight in the specific blockchain technology, let alone the cryptography behind it. That is where we want to go, but we will get there across as an industry. We will revolutionize many existing models, and we will see entirely new things coming into business and into our social lives that we haven't even dreamt of yet, but are made possible by the technology and the features of that technology that blockchain is. So I'm very, very excited about the general prospects for the industry. And of course, I'm very excited about the fact that we have from day one and continue to build something that is suitable for business adoption, right? That ticks the boxes that a corporate or even a small business would look at when they want to build something serious. So I think we're building the right thing for a great future for blockchain in general. And I'm very excited to be part of it. I will be part of it for a very long time. I spent 26 years with Saxo Bank. If I have to spend 26 years to make this the world's biggest blockchain, I will hang around for 26 years. I don't think it's going to take that long, but I'm very committed to it, and you're not going to buy any tokens from me at this point. That's very much for sure.
That's good to hear. Thank you, everyone, for joining our AMA today with Lars. Thank you, Lars, for being here again. Thank you for being open and transparent with the community. We hope you enjoyed this session and received the answers that you're looking for. We promised a prize to one of you every month who sent in your questions to the Twitter using the hashtag. The person receiving this month's prize is @ZenLucci. We will contact you via Twitter, so get your wallet ready. Our next AMA will be held on March the 16th. We will host Jesper Johansson, I think that is. Please excuse me if I've gotten that wrong. Jesper Johansson, he's the CEO of Northstake. So be sure to send your questions in ahead of time using the hashtag, and you could be the next winner. Also, this AMA has been recorded for you to listen back to as a podcast, and they'll be available on demand on a variety of outlets, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more places. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Off the Blocks. To discover more about Concordium and ask your own questions, just follow us on Twitter. Concordium, made for the future economy.